Hey, this just in. Georgia has a lot of question marks all over the defense. We anticipate them to be better next year. We talked about it yesterday. A big group that we're going to have to see a lot of new production from, the edge. What grade do we give them next? Locked on Bulldogs.
You are Locked on Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked on Bulldogs podcast, your team every single day. He is Clint. I am Daniel. And excited to be here with you on a Friday. What is it, Friday, Clint? I can't keep up with the days. Excited to be here with you. Excited to be talking about this Georgia 2025 Georgia defense. Today we're talking about the edge, so get excited about that. There'll probably be a little bit of banter because people enjoy that. And firstly, let me just say, if you're an everydayer, if you make us your first listen of every day, if you're a loyal third segment listener, part of the 199, you stay all the way till the end. We really appreciate you. Thanks so much for doing that. We'll be here every day of the off season. You can count on us. We are here talking about the Dogs. We may be talking about March Madness in a couple weeks. We may just say it a little quieter. Listen, by the way, Clint, it's always good to get into this in the first segment because it draws people in. No one's turning off the show right now. Don't try to explain to Georgia fans.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
That a win at home over the number 3 team in the country, Florida, is viewed exactly equally to a win on the road against unranked Texas. Both are quad 1 wins.
Both.
So if you think that what's going to happen tomorrow on the hardwood is somehow less important than the absolute joy and euphoria that happened on Tuesday in Stegman Coliseum, you are sadly not a knower of college basketball or how it works. So we need to be engaged. Georgia has got to go 2-1 in these next 3. If we win all 3, I feel great.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, if we win all 3, we are making the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that I agree with.
If we go 2 of 3, I still think we will get in. If we go 1 and 2, we are not making the NCAA tournament. This is how important these games are. And the Texas game is so critical.
In the comments, just tell your boy that you agree with him. He needs to hear it right now.
I don't need it. I don't need anything from you, listeners. You're the ones that told me Mike White could never beat Florida. You're the ones that told me he was a bad hire. Okay, so I don't need anything from you. You're the ones
sit in the corner by yourself and not celebrate that win because you could do it.
Edge defenders, Clint, is what we're talking about now. If you're new to this conversation, after you listen to this episode, you can go back and listen to. We've talked about the defensive front, which includes defensive end, defensive tackle, nose. I talked about that earlier in the week on the show. We talked about the offensive line, the tight ends, the wide receivers, which, by the way, Clint laid his cards out on the table, is very high on. He's not trying to temper your expectations.
Wait till we get to linebackers.
So if you're not high on the wide receivers, maybe just peep that episode and he will talk some life into you. We talked about the running backs. We talked about the quarterback. We're giving grades like A+, B+, whatever grades for each group. And that way at the end of all of this, we can kind of compare and contrast and figure out where the relative strengths and weaknesses are on Georgia's roster. Now, all that to say, we're getting to probably the most difficult to define position group of all of them. Is the edge defender. Who is an edge defender? What do we mean when we say edge defender? We basically mean an outside linebacker, a hybrid guy, maybe somebody who's technically listed as a star, but they come inside and that's where they end up playing. It's more of a place on the field than it is a position group, but it's an important one. You could argue one of the most important position groups on Georgia's roster.
I would say probably the 4th most important position group on the entirety of the roster because what it does, and when we had it going well last year, defense looked good. When it wasn't going well and we couldn't set the edge, looked abysmal. We beat Texas because they couldn't run on the edge of our defense.
And
Period.
because Quinn Ewers was running for his life because of the edge defenders, just to prove that we've had some separate recordings, Clint, just to verify that we're still of one mind.
Yeah.
Offensive line, defensive line, quarterback are the other three. Right?
Correct.
Those, and then edge would be 4. Unequivocally, those are the top 3.
In my book. That's what I'd say. Yes.
Okay. I am in agreement with you there. So let's talk about these edge defenders. Let's start with the guys that are kind of listed outside linebackers. And you can't really, we have to start in this position group by talking about the guy that's not in the room.
Right? Yeah.
And we've talked about in Georgia certainly lost players in this room, right? Yeah. Chaz Chambliss being among the most notable of this in terms of loss of returning production. And Chaz Chambliss, Clint, was a very, very productive player on last year's team. He's a significant loss.
Unbelievably so. I know we like clowning him, and this podcast included. There were a couple of times last year, early on in the season, where I thought Chaz was lost, couldn't overpower anybody, couldn't get. By the end of the year, he was wreaking havoc on pulling guards, on any tight end trying to keep him out of position. He handled his business setting the edge. Now, he had one particular set of skills that he actually evolved greater at pass rush than I anticipated. He actually was admirable in the pass rush. Him not being there is a major blow because he was the floor of that group, Daniel. He was constant, consistent.
That's right.
When other guys couldn't do it, he was there, and you saw it as in snap count. Kirby trusted him.
Yeah, absolutely.
In high pressure situations, in stunts, pass sets, anything to get the job done. And so him not being there, somebody else is going to step up with the experience and the productivity of snap counts. And as defense goes, everybody wants to look at tackles and be like, oh, that's the best stat, or sacks, and oh, that's the best stat. Again, Nolan Smith had 3 sacks his last year at Georgia. He's one of the better edge guys in the NFC because stats like that don't really count. You cannot look on defense, especially. You have to look at how they play within the system and how they understand it. And Chaz was an MVP for us because he played within the system so beautifully well. Him not being there, Daniel, who is it that probably has the greatest likelihood of becoming this year's Chaz?
Well, no one.
There you go. Thank you.
The answer is no one. The fact that we're talking about Chaz first is, probably telling because the other name that we lose at this position is Mykel Williams, soon to be first-round draft pick, and perennially elite edge defender for Georgia. And so those two guys leaving the program, I think, is going to really put a lot of pressure on guys like Gabe Harris that we're going to talk about, on some of the younger players that haven't seen nearly as much action. But as much as Mykel Williams, a first-round draft pick, and Chaz Chambliss, a reliable, trustworthy, dependable, you can count on him for everything.
Yep.
As much as those two guys not being here this year hurts, I'm going to make the argument when we come back from break that the biggest loss from this position group, from the edge defenders, is neither of those two guys, but is in fact a guy that is still playing college football, just not for Georgia
this one
anymore. It's going to sting, but it'll be good. We'll get through it together right after these.
And these are, in fact, fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take the first steps, and before you know it, they're off in college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family needs. With Fabric, you can avoid anything that are problematic by getting the right life insurance online, the most appropriate for you, right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, I want to make sure my family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives me that peace of mind. It's also affordable and goes beyond life insurance. Free digital wills and access to investment accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Locked On College. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Yeah, Daniel, the bad news for many of us is that transfer portal is real. We saw a war of attrition and depth being depleted across many fronts on college football. And Georgia was no exception to this last year. We lost a ton of depth in the portal from 2 years ago to last year. And then from this last year coming into this year, guys that we anticipated being top stars, the next guy up, went and got a bag. Good on them. And are playing elsewhere. Who is the guy that we're going to miss the most out of this room, Daniel?
Yeah, I think it's unequivocally Damon Wilson, and he was slotted to be just the next guy up, the next guy in. Got a ton of playing time last year. Yeah. You can't look at stats for a guy like this because, again, he's further down on the depth chart. But you look at rotation and snap counts, you see how much he was on the field, how much the coaching staff trusted him, even with guys like Chaz Chambliss and Michael Williams on the roster. And the amount that Damon Wilson played, what we saw from him as he played, and when all signs pointed to that he was going to be the guy this year. Listen, here's the thing about this show. It's a bit of a soapbox, a bit of a tangent, but why don't we just take it together, Clint? We want you to believe us when we say things. We want you to know that when we say, we don't want you to take us too seriously because we are not gurus or insiders. And so we're just Georgia fans. But I hope that we've proven and will continue to prove that when we say things on this show, we're not afraid to just say how we actually feel. And so when we tell you, there's a lot of Georgia fans that want to just put the blinders on in a moment like this. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And all of the transfer news is interpreted the same way.
Good.
All of the transfer
if they can't cut it at Georgia, I don't want them. Kirby doesn't want them on the team. I don't want them neither. Well,
okay. Well, let's just slow down there because we will be the first to tell you when a guy like Bear Alexander transfers to USC. We say, good riddance to you, sir. You have made a horrible mistake.
Horrible.
If you were allowed to be on this team next year, which is up for debate, you have made a huge mistake choosing not to be on this team.
Correct.
Next year. We're not afraid to tell you that. So the fact of the matter is that not all situations are like that. Some situations are a guy goes out and he gets a bag, or he sees a situation and he says, for whatever reason, this looks more desirable to me. It could have any number of factors involved.
Right? A.D. Mitchell, I got to be close to my kin.
Right? My girlfriend lives in Miami. Okay. So, there are plenty of reasons that people make decisions. Not every situation is the coaching staff ran them off. Not every situation is and this is a situation which Georgia takes a big L in this. I saw a list recently of the most impactful projected transfers in the SEC across all SEC teams. And number one on that list was Damon Wilson going to Missouri. It's a big time loss for Georgia. Yes. So that being said, Georgia is left with Gabe Harris as kind of the guy at outside backer. Now, Gabe Harris is not new to the program. He's a rising junior. He's been in the system for a while, and he's not just like a special teams guy. Gabe Harris has gotten playing time, not quite as much as Damon Wilson, but he was going to be in rotation with Damon Wilson already this year. They were going to be 1A and 1B. The issue to me, Clint, and we could talk about Gabe Harris before we move on, but the issue is that once you get past Gabe Harris at this position,
I do want to talk about Gabe Harris. I do want to give him his dues, and then I want to get on to some other concerning aspects about this depth chart. There are a number of guys that I'm excited for, that you should be excited for, that if you look at the roster composition of how Georgia has recruited in this field, this position. It should give you excitement. Like there is no doubt, talented, big, physical guys. Gabe Harris, I want to tell you, just remind you of what he brings and what he did bring when he was recruited, came in from Florida, top 100 in the nation across all position groups. And this cat has draft eligible attributes today, like with a full season of productivity under his belt and full game tape out there. This cat is a viable option to be a good, probably top 3 rounds draft choice, with his ceiling being late day 1, early day 2 selection. I do think like we're talking a guy who is Nolan Smith-esque ability that has that. Like, and this is not me calling for that. I'm just telling you what you do with these kids. And you have to remind yourself of this, Georgia fan. They're lotto tickets that need developed and need to go ahead and get into the right system and be crafted and made that way. Gabe Harris has all the tools and all the physical abilities there. Top 100, big lean frame, can go inside or outside on the edge. He can play in front where he puts his hand down and gets after a tackle on the outside shoulder, goes ahead and fronts him up. So that's why when we say Chaz Chambliss, there's nobody like Chaz, but Gabe Harris to me is the closest we can have. Now, I got done saying Chaz was our highest floor. Gabe Harris has the ability to be a guy that sustained a block and kept the point of attack. That's what an edge defender does against the run. When the run's coming to you, all you got to be is a rock of Gibraltar that don't let nobody get past you. Like everything spills off of you. Okay.
Yeah.
Gabe Harris has that ability, but he also has, I think, the higher ceiling to, once that isn't there, to transition to get upfield on the shoulder. Top 100 guy coming out 6'4", 6'5". 255 probably now when all said and done, 260 somewhere around there. And look, it's gonna have to be. We're gonna get into other guys. I have a big question, because the biggest question mark, and for my money, maybe even a bigger upside, is Johnson. But Gabe Harris should give us some excitement. He's a drop off from Damon Wilson. Again, we just said that. That's why having both of them was gonna be a little bit nightmarish.
I don't even know that he's that big of a drop off. One is worse than two. That's the problem here.
Yes.
I think if Gabe Harris transfers to Missouri, there's a good chance he's in the top 3 most impactful projected transfers in the SEC. If we still have Damon Wilson, we are moaning the exact same moan that we're doing right now, because you really needed both of these guys, because we're going to get into what's behind them in a second. In terms of guys that are slotted at the outside linebacker position, some of them, all of them, are interesting for various reasons. And then, Clint, I'm going to get into what I think is going to be the approach of this coaching staff, and it's going to be outside of the box. We'll talk about it next on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
But first, wanted to let you know of Prize Picks. Prize Picks is fantastic. March basketball is here, and for some of us, we have higher hopes than others of us. But hey, guess what? It doesn't matter, because March is going to be fantastic either way. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you win up to $1,000 times your cash. It's fast, easy, keeps every game exciting. Quick and easy. Love how easy it is to make my picks in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. Fast payouts. When I win, it hits in less than 15 minutes. Download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, Clint, let's get to the options behind Gabe Harris. Gabe Harris, obviously the starter, but you're going to see rotation at this position. You're obviously going to see multiple guys running it on the edge. You can't rush the passer for 6 downs in a row in college football. Like it's max effort. It's a max effort position. It is a strain and, intensity position. And so you're going to see rotation. So who are the guys you're going to see? And I think you mentioned it before. I think the number one guy off the bench is Quintavious Johnson. You talked about Gabe Harris, top 100 player nationally. Quintavious Johnson was not. You talked about Gabe Harris, 4-star player. Quintavious Johnson Was not. You talked about, all the accolades and the high school honors and the whatever and the what. Quintavious Johnson didn't have any of that. Do you know what he did have, Clint?
What's that?
He had the eye of the Georgia defensive coaching staff. He did something that impressed a guy whose name is Glenn Schumann, and thereby he found himself on the Georgia roster. And all of last year, you saw Quintavious Johnson on the Georgia roster, not learning in practice.
No.
He was out there in those games, Clint, playing special teams and developing on the field. He didn't take a red shirt last year, Clint,
no, sir.
Because this coaching staff saw him. Let me ask you, Clint, has Kirby Smart been cagey or elusive about how he feels the importance of special teams are? Does he value them or not value them? Is it unclear at this point?
Do me a huge favor. Go back to every single highly recruited Georgia player that we had high hopes for and look where they play the very first couple of games on kick coverage, punt coverage. Daniel and I, when we go to games,
Trayvon Walker.
There it is. Instantaneously, our eyes went and said, oh my gosh, Trayvon Walker is mowing people down.
There's a 260-pound man running down there covering kicks. What is happening in life?
What is happening? He turned out to be pretty young. Daniel, the reason why I said ceiling might be higher from it, I'm not basing this on any camp, any assessment.
No.
I am basing on exactly what you just said. Glenn and Kirby said, I'm going to take this 3-star kid that not many people are talking about. I'm going to put him on the roster.
True freshman kid last year.
Play him instantly. Guys,
as a true freshman last year.
You don't get it is not a throwaway. Kirby Smart does not do charity. He does not let you play on any position if you don't earn it. Like, you may think as a fan special teams is throwaway. Kirby does not.
No. That's why Kirby's employed as the head coach at Georgia and you are not. But that's a topic for another day. I'm going to tell you, I have not heard the coaching staff tell me what they think about Quintavious Johnson. I have not heard the report of an insider or guru about what they think the coaching staff thinks about Quintavious Johnson.
Sure.
I'm here to tell you that I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this coaching staff really likes Quintavious Johnson. I'm just here to tell you that. And the evidence is right in front of you, and we just pointed to it. So if you think that the 5-star freshman that we're about to talk about is going to come right in and be number 2 on this depth chart, I'm just telling you, I don't know that that's what I see happening.
No.
However, am I glad that Isaiah Gibson is a dog, especially given the Damon Wilson transfer news? Why, yes. Yes, I am. Isaiah Gibson is the biggest edge recruit that Georgia has signed since Mykel Williams. Like, he is an absolute one of one.
Yes.
And I mean literal the number 1 edge defender in all of college football, according to most major services last year. It's going to be difficult to come in and make an impact right away. It's very hard to step into the SEC and be a productive player. You mentioned it's a lot more than just rushing the passer. It's setting the edge. It's playing the run. It's being stout. Isaiah Gibson, he's got everything that you would want in one of these defenders, right? He's 6'4", he's 270, he's got size, he's got speed, he's explosive, he's got great hands, he's violent at the point of attack. You watch, he checks all the boxes, right? Number 1 edge defender in the country.
Yep.
I think he's going to make an impact this year. You're going to see him on the field this year, Clint. How productive will he be? I don't know.
The biggest hockey line change. Look, I don't think with inside 3 techs, 2 techs, guys hand on the ground, and in some instances, it's 2 guys who are what you would call defensive tackle in Georgia's scheme coming down. I think that is a 3 to 4 man rotation, maybe at most. I really do. Inside linebacker, you said outside the box thinking. I think the term backer this year is going to be a very loose term for Georgia. I think both Chris Cole, come on, just he going to be on the field, and that's all I care about. Like I don't care where you put him. He's going to be on the field.
That's my out of the box solution. I think when Georgia thinks about outside linebackers, you got to stop thinking about so many outside linebackers.
Correct.
Let me ask you this. At what point did Kirby Smart acknowledge that Jalen Walker was an outside linebacker? The answer is at no point. Never.
Time.
Because he was always an inside linebacker.
Correct.
Let me ask you this. At what point was he one of the top 2 inside linebackers on the depth chart in his UGA career? At no point was he.
Nope.
At no point was he one of the top 2 inside backers. He won he won the best defensive player in college football award. And
Correct.
he was not one of the 2 best players at his listed position on his team. Okay. Make it make sense. The way that it makes sense is Kirby plays football players. Glenn puts football players onto the football field to, wait for it, play football.
Fascinating.
If you don't think Justin Williams and Chris Cole are going to be 2 of the 11 best football players on this defense next year, you have not been paying attention to Justin Williams and Chris Cole.
How do I know? And this is tangential. I get it. We're going to get to inside linebackers and why I'm so high. And I'm going to be sky high.
We're going to talk about these same 2 guys again.
Okay. Yeah, we are. Justin Williams is going to play a ton of snaps this year. I mean, a ton. Reason why? Mm-hmm. Chris Cole is going to be floating around everywhere.
Yeah.
He's going to cover a slot receiver.
Jonelle Aguero, you're the star? Interesting. Well, Chris Cole's on the field right now. So I would
see how that's an edge. He's going to be covering a slot defender on the edge in case it's a run and then dropping back and coverage, like we saw him do many times last year. Chris Cole. We saw that happen, which means that for the 2 inside backers, Raylan Wilson, CJ Allen, Justin Williams is going to rotate with them and Chris Cole on the field at the same time. Kirby plays players, and I think pressure. Stop looking at edge defenders as only one outside linebacker. Think of it as pressure and setting the edge. That's what they should be. If you can do that, and we're going to count on, hey, Janelle, if you can't do that, you won't play safety on this deep. Like, we will move KJ into that position. We'll move Jones into that position. Somebody else will come up and play that easily. But I think to get pressures and to set the edge, it's going to take the term of just, how about backer? Just let that be your term. Let football player be your term for this. I know sometimes we get a little nervous about positionless players because we were triggered by that from another coach that had no connection.
Let's not. But we're deep in the 3rd segment now, but I can't even handle that. I wasn't ready for that.
Well, you never are, Daniel. When it's just that reaction just never
when
really.
When a Crean reference gets made, no one's ever ready. You just have to do the best you can.
He is Daniel. I am Clint. This is Locked On Bulldogs, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every single day. We'll be back next week. See y'all then.
See ya.